Hello,
right.
everyone. Welcome to we have a lot to talk about Q&A.
Yeah, we weren't sure what to title the theme for this, but it's been a minute and it seems like a lot of people have a lot of questions. So we're gonna try to address some of those here.
So very briefly, if you're new here, my name is Sean Peterson. I'm a recent PhD graduate from UC Berkeley in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy, and Management, and I am currently a postdoctoral researcher at the State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry.
And I'm Lynn Schofield. I'm a biologist working with the Institute for Bird Population. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we kind of wanted to start this by saying, we have a lot to talk about, and I feel like one of the things that has been a bit difficult this season is we haven't had time to really kind of, I think, totally mourn Grinnell and honor him the way we would like to. So just wanted to let people know we do have plans to honor Grinnell properly. But just because everything has been moving so fast with Alden stepping in, we've been trying to keep up with the nest activity and haven't had as much time to really put together a memorial for Grinnell. But yeah, let's go ahead and start with your questions. So first question we have is, how recently did Alden injure his leg? Was Alden likely one of the Falcons who attacked Grinnell a few months ago?
Yeah, so the first part of the question, I'm going to go with a hard I don't know. The leg injury, we speculate, is a relatively old injury that healed poorly, but I don't know that for sure. And then, was Alden likely one of the Falcons who attacked Grinnell? We do not believe Alden was involved in attacking Grinnell. He's actually an individual that we had seen several times before Grinnell's passing, and we, although at the time thought Alden was a female, we had taken video of and kind of commented about that this bird who's been around for some reason, Annie and Grinnell, neither of them were aggressive towards this bird, which later turned out to be Alden. So we do not believe it was Alden involved in the altercation with Grinnell, because also Grinnell, the morning of his death, was fighting with another falcon, but it was a juvenile female bird, so definitely not Alden.
Yeah, and the injury that Alden has does look pretty old, so that's another point of evidence against Alden being involved in the attack in October, because we think we would have noticed the limp on that bird, given that Alden appears to have a pretty old injury.
Okay, so how eager are falcons to raise another falcon's chicks? Is Alden likely the father of all three of the latest chicks?
This is a great question. He is probably not the father of all three chicks. The first two eggs are most likely Grinnell's. We saw them mating pretty quickly before that they were laid, so evidence really kind of points to them being Grinnell's. The third egg, if you want to speak to that one.
Yeah, so the third egg could be either. The timing of copulation events relative to the laying of this egg are such that it could have been either individual. So we may or may not find out, because feather samples are collected during banding of the chicks for another project relating to heavy metal levels in wildlife, but those feather samples could be used for genetic testing. Just saying.
There's been very little evidence of extra pair paternity in peregrine falcons in the wild, but that's poorly studied. And this is a bit of a strange situation where the mate switches mid-laying. So it's just something where we don't know, and hopefully we'll be able to collect the data to kind of get parental genetics on these 3 chicks if all 3 hatch. But it's just hard to say.
Although we almost didn't address the first bit of the question: how eager is a falcon to raise another falcon's chicks? People are often sort of like, but the cruel forces of evolution would never allow an individual to raise another falcon's chicks. But even from the kind of standpoint of like trying to explain everything from the evolutionary success, a falcon's desire to be a good dad is a valuable trait, because falcons do need to be good dads if they're going to successfully raise their own chicks. And also, if Alden wants to try to earn this territory and become Annie's mate, he's, this is what he sort of needs to do as Annie's new mate, or she's going to reject him. She's not going to be interested in, in an individual who isn't doing that presently. And this is his chance to be part of that family.
All right. So next question is, I always get anxious whenever the eggs are left alone for a few minutes. What is usually happening during that time? Typically, if you see the eggs unattended for a brief moment, it's not a problem. Often birds will swap parental care, and what will happen is Alden will fly in, making a bunch of noise, saying that he's got food or he's here to take over, and Annie will hop off the nest and fly and grab the food, or go off on her own. And it might take a minute or 2 for Alden to get on the eggs, and that's no problem. Sometimes if Alden is out hunting for longer stretches, Annie will take 5-10 minutes to hop off the eggs and go grab some food from their little pantry. I guess is kind of how I would describe it. But they've got food often stashed on the tower for when they get a bit peckish. So sometimes she'll just step away to have a little snack.
But yeah, the eggs can be left alone for 5 or 10 minutes. Totally fine. That amount of time for the eggs to be not totally unattended, even if you're not seeing one of the individuals in the box, they are in sight distance 100% of the time, pretty much, unless there's something sort of exceptional happening. But 5 or 10 minutes without an adult on the eggs is perfectly normal.
And even up to a little bit longer. It really depends on the conditions. If it's like wet and rainy, the eggs are going to cool a lot faster than if it's kind of hot and dry or they're in the sun. So there's a lot of management of the temperature of these eggs that goes on. Lynn, can you translate falcon speak?
I wish. We know kind of what some of the vocalizations that they make mean. But a lot of them, especially coming out of Alden, we really don't. Alden is a much chirpier falcon than typical. He's
very chatty.
He vocalizes a lot more than a lot of other falcons do. But the chups they make when Alden comes in while Annie's incubating is usually sort of Annie asking for food is a common thing. There's the e-chup noise that they did earlier in courtship that is known to be sort of a courtship vocalization. But then a lot of them are what's sort of known as contact calls, which is pretty much, hey, are you out there? Yeah. You good? Yeah. So that's, I think, a lot of what you're hearing, but yeah, we don't know falcon speak.
Yeah. And, the sound that you really want to kind of listen for a really pissed off falcon is the kind of kecking call, which is a really rapid, kind of angry. I mean, it's pretty angry sounding, and it's pretty easy to pick that one up. That usually means there's an intruder in the area, or something is really, really angering whoever's there. All right, so the nest that we're looking at right now, it's actually a reclaimed redwood nest box. It's very fancy. So this was made by let's see, who made Mary Malik.
Mary Malik made the box.
I think someone else helped her design it too. And so I apologize to Mary and whoever else helped out for getting the details.
Yeah, Mary Malik. She's one of the members of Cal Falcons and one of the people who spends quite a bit of time bringing us reports from the ground. She does a lot of falcon watching, and then leads a lot of the fledge watch efforts later in the season. So when you're on the Instagram or Twitter feeds and people ask like, where's Alden, and we have an answer about, oh, he's been seen XYZ place off camera, that would be either Mary Malik or Bridget Ahern's hard work observing them from the ground. So yeah.
And the last part of this question, is it used every year? Yes, it has been. This is the 6th year it has been used. Well, the first year it was just a tray, and then we installed this box the second year. But the only thing that we do for maintenance is to replace the gravel every few years, which I think we did just this last year.
Pick up the crud.
Yeah, pick up the crud to kind of clean off the tower a little bit.
And scrub up some of the poop as best we can.
Yeah, which is a little hard to do. How old do we think Alden is? How do you age a birdling? How old do you know how old a falcon is?
So the only real clues that we have that allows us to know for sure is that whether or not the falcon has adult feathers or juvenile feathers. So juvenile falcon is much browner and has vertical streaking across their whole chest and belly, whereas an adult bird like Alden has the gray and mostly thinner vertical barring across the belly. So we know that Alden has arrived here to us with fully adult feathers. So that means that this is his 2nd year of life.
At least. Third year.
Yes, 3rd year of life at least. So he's at least 2 years old.
The latest he could have been born was 2020. Earliest, I guess, and the oldest wild falcon was what, 25-ish? But that's like an extreme end. And we don't exactly think he's that old. He's probably likely on the younger side in that 2, 3, 4 range. But we don't really have a way to know.
Yeah, we hypothesize he might be on the younger side because at the beginning of him taking over incubation duties, he seemed a little bit tentative about it and seems to have taken a little bit of time to kind of get used to doing it, which might indicate he hasn't incubated at a nest before. Although it also might indicate he was just nervous about coming to a new nest so abruptly.
All right. So how much time does Alden spend sitting on the nest? And then I'll kind of add a second part to this question. Is it a relatively normal amount? Is he kind of pulling his weight for incubating the eggs?
So there's a pretty big amount of variation when it comes to peregrine falcon males and how much time they spend incubating. Alden, I feel like he's spending, 3 or so hours a day on the nest?
Roughly.
Yeah, so he's taking turns, and so long enough for Annie to get a chance to eat and preen and relax. But this is on the lower end for falcons, which again, I guess is part of why we hypothesize he might be younger because he might be kind of newer to the incubation thing. But so total normal amount of incubation from a peregrine falcon, the male's primary responsibility is to bring food to the female. But relative to Grinnell spent about a third of the time incubating or more. And there's actually some falcon pairs where the male is the one who primarily does the incubation while the female hunts. This is relatively rare, but the point is there's kind of a lot of variation. Alden's doing a pretty normal amount, but on the lower side, Grinnell kind of was on the higher side, and you know.
And one other thing to consider is that some of that variation may be driven by Annie. That, you know, with Grinnell, she had a mate that she had spent a lot more time getting to know, and kind of learning his habits and his patterns, and trusting him with the eggs. And she may just kind of still be learning how Alden kind of works as a mate. You know, they were kind of thrust into this relationship by circumstance pretty quickly. Usually falcon courtship takes a lot longer than a day. And so it may be driven by kind of how much Annie feels comfortable with leaving the eggs.
Yeah. Oh, I like this next question. How would we describe his personality? And, you know, Alden is actually a very kind of unique falcon in a few ways. We already mentioned a little bit earlier that he's a lot more vocal than the average falcon. He spends more time sort of chupping and making little chirp sounds than you usually hear.
One of the internal nicknames amongst Cal Falcons volunteers for Alden is Mr. Chirpy.
Yes, our group texts. In our group texts, he goes by Mr. Chirpy or Loaf.
But yeah, he's one thing I've noticed about him is he's a very aggressive defender of the nest site.
Yes. I think he's quite a bit more aggressive than Grinnell was.
Yeah.
Because Grinnell would try to make sure the birds left the tower, and Alden will then continue pursuing quite a bit more.
Yeah.
Well, then, hang on. I still have a few other hilarious things about Alden. He hunts at night.
Oh, yeah. The night hunting is awesome.
He primarily hunts at night, which is not super common, but it's also not unheard of. There's a lot of songbirds and shorebirds that migrate at night. So that's a good time to hunt if you are a peregrine falcon who's gotten good at it, which apparently Alden has. And he likes to sit around as a little loaf sometimes.
Yeah, the loaf pose is awesome.
Yes.
And we should mention that those last two things may be because of his injury in some extent. The loaf pose, which a lot of falcons do, it's just a really common, relaxing pose, but he seems to do it a little bit more than most. But that might help take some pressure off his injured leg. And then hunting at night. So peregrine falcons, as many of you know, are the fastest bird in the world, and they basically hunt by diving down at something as fast as they can and punching it as hard as they can so that it breaks their neck and dies. So
macabre description of it.
It's an accurate description though. But so hunting and killing prey is probably not affected by his leg because he can hit stuff with his good leg, and the prey will probably die. But what may be affected a little bit is being able to catch the prey and maneuver it and carry it back to the nest. So there's a possibility that might take him longer. So he hunts at night so he doesn't have the threat of other birds stealing prey from underneath him. Or I don't know. There could be a few other reasons why he chooses to hunt at night.
I mean, there's good hunting at night.
And there's just good hunting at night.
You know, different individual birds will just have learned to do different things and hunt different prey. So, yeah.
All right. So a little bit more, I guess, following up on that, a little bit more about his injury. I kind of doubt it will get worse over time. I feel like if he has made it this far We think it's an older injury. So if he's made it this far, I don't think it's going to get worse. It looks like it's damage. So the way a bird's foot is structured, you have what is the foot. What we consider the foot is like just the tips of the toes, and then the next the part of the leg that you can see up from the foot is actually this part of on a human. It's the kind of the palm of the hand, but it's a lot longer and thinner. And so we think that the injury is probably right about where the wrist is, because often when he stands with that joint held oddly straight. So that's kind of my personal guess as to where the injury is. But because falcons hunt by punching things as hard as they can, I mean, they risk breaking their legs while hunting. And we have seen other falcons that have thrived with a broken leg, and they can recover from that injury despite that being their main hunting tool.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting question. So past couple years have been very successful for breeding falcons. Is that potentially due to the pandemic? Is less human activity beneficial? And
this is a really good question.
My gut feeling is falcons are sort of occupying another strata of like the urban world and are so high up that probably what's going down at the human and ground level probably doesn't affect them a ton. I don't think there's a lot of direct disturbances from humans, but it might be that fledglings taking their first flights, that they have had some somewhat safer first flights due to some reduced traffic and reduced foot traffic. So maybe not necessarily affecting adult birds, but maybe affecting those first few days as young birds are learning to fly and more likely to end up on the ground.
Yeah, that's definitely possibly the case. And I think that would potentially explain why we've seen so many juvenile birds this year. You know, it seems like last year was just a banner year for peregrine falcons, and because we've just seen so many juveniles flying around.
Yeah, because there's been how many
8
interlopers have we? I think we've identified 10 total, 8 of which were juveniles.
I think that sounds right.
So that's a large percentage of the individuals that we're observing being juveniles.
Yeah. All right. So next question is, do the chicks in the eggs hear vocalizations? Is that needed for the eggs to mature?
Later in their development, they definitely do hear the vocalizations. And right before hatching, you will often see the adults making little chirping noises at the eggs hatching. And you can also, we would never be able to hear it from our webcams audio, but close up you can hear. And so the adult falcons can hear cheeps coming from the egg in the days before hatching as well. For peregrine falcons, it is a little different from other birds. Songbirds actually need to be hearing the songs of their own species to develop the ability to learn those songs. Obviously, that is not at issue with peregrine falcons, but they are able to hear vocalizations. And the adults do vocalize to them right before hatching, and it does right before hatching to kind of communicate to the adults that they're about to come out.
It does help the chicks speed up their hatching. They're encouraged by the adult vocalizations to start the hatching process. Okay,
so here's the question we all want to ask: do we expect all 3 eggs to hatch? And this is another.
So Annie has never hatched every egg she has laid.
Even in the best of
circumstances. There's always been at least one egg that has failed. So we don't know, and we're not gonna. We're hoping, like we're still hoping that at least one will hatch.
Yeah. So here's the rundown. There's nothing obvious that would make us concerned about these eggs. There has been no gaps in incubation once they started doing full incubation. Early on, before they started full incubation, there weren't any real gaps in care either that, extended beyond what is usual at that time. So there's no reason to believe that they won't be able to hatch some of these chicks. But there's a lot we don't know. During the period that Annie was laying eggs, she was also doing quite a bit of nest defense. So that's a lot of stress for Annie that could affect development. And yeah, as Sean mentioned, that they just don't always hatch all of the eggs. They just don't all necessarily develop even in the best times. So we're hopeful that we will have some of the eggs hatch. We're very hopeful it will be all three. But there are a lot of unknowns still to find out. And
yeah,
I got to tell you, I'll be very anxious on May 5th and 6th.
Yeah.
When we're hoping to have the eggs hatching.
All right, so this is talking about Bay Area falcons. So the nearest other falcon nest is how close could a pair build closer to the campanile? So I think so most of the data from where peregrine falcons are in the Bay Area comes from the Santa Cruz Predatory Bird Research Group, headed by Dr. Zika Glucks, who is the person who does our banding. So you'll see her if we get a hatch. You'll see her in about a month from now. And they have, I think, 35-ish territories that they monitor in the Bay Area. The nearest one to the campanile is about 3 miles?
It's about 3 miles.
Which is roughly what you kind of would expect the exclusion zone to be, between the buffer between two nests to be. So it would be hard to slot another nest in. That said, there are places where nests are denser. Morro Rock here in California has 2 pairs on different sides of the same rock. So it's possible there could be another nest slotted in there. It's more of a matter of, is there a good place for a nest?
Well, it's a few things.
Yeah.
Probably the food source is abundant enough for, a higher density of falcons, just because pigeons are abundant. But there is nest sites. There's a lot more to nest sites than just the presence of those boxes. And I feel like there's a bit of only the falcons know exactly what they're looking for. So just the right kind of nest sites are not always present. And then peregrine falcons just in general do not like other outsiders near their territory. And so even though in theory more could fit in, it's very likely that the territorial birds won't allow that amount of proximity.
All right. So this is a really interesting question because bird breeding is very different than mammal breeding. So it's a little bit hard to kind of wrap your head around how quickly it happens. So for falcons, does copulation stimulate ovulation, or can they ovulate without it, like humans and chickens? So with falcons, ovulation occurs when the egg is fertilized. So it requires the egg to be fertilized by sperm. So copulation does not stimulate ovulation. It's not released into the oviduct until the sperm is fertilizes the egg. Once it's released into the oviduct, it's basically a 2-day journey. And it starts out with the egg getting fertilized and then all the fun bits and pieces that make up an egg added to it. And then the shell is laid down in the last few hours before it's laid. So it's a really quick process. And one of the things that I love about eggs, bird eggs, is that it's one cell. like it doesn't start developing until it's being incubated. So it's a single cell. And so like the ostrich egg is the largest cell in the world. So if anyone ever asks if you can see a cell, yeah, you can. Just look at a bird egg, because that's a cell. But yeah, so it's a really quick process, and it starts when the ovum is fertilized.
I will say the kind of question in between here, I'm not sure if it's a goof or not, but it does lead me to. So answer one. I know nothing about falconry, and this would be a falconry question. If it's not a goof, but it just made me think of, would people be interested in a Q&A where we got a falconer in to tell us about falconry and falcon husbandry? I think that would be really interesting to talk about. It's not something I know a ton about. I know a little bit, but yeah, people opine if you want to hear about falconry, and we could maybe find somebody to do a Q&A.
Yeah. So the next question is, when we visit the campanile, could you tell us how we should orient ourselves so we can try spotting our falcons? Which side is the nest/camera? So I'm going to actually see if maybe I can
get
a picture of the campanile so we can like point out.
That's a good idea.
Point out where to look for them. Okay.
Is this like a full screen share?
No.
I mean, it seems like you have very legitimate things on your screen here, but just curious.
Okay, so let's try sharing this tab. Stop screen, share screen. Sorry, I'm like, okay. So I think this might be working.
Okay, now we can tell people where to look on the campanile.
Unfortunately, I can't like point to things. I don't have like a little laser pointer.
But so you can see on the campanile, there's the clock.
First of all, I guess we're looking at the west-facing side of the campanile here.
Which is the side that the nest is on.
This is the side the nest is on. So if you're seeing the red steps going up to the campanile, that's the correct side to be looking for on the nest.
So anyways, little landmarks on the campanile. So there's the clock, and right above that is the 3 arches, and inside of that is where the bells are, and it's where the visitor observation deck is that you can go up to. And then right above that balcony where there's the little
spires on the corner, that's the level the falcons are at. So if you are on campus and want to try to see them, that's the level you're most likely to see them at, or right above that. They like to spend quite a bit of time on those 4 spires and on the ledge right above the balcony where the nest is. They also really like the lantern at the very top of the tower, so all the way up at the top. So check there. They seem to prefer the west and north sides of the tower, but they could be on any side. So yeah, that's kind of our tips.
Our falcon watching tip. And we'll go switch back to the calming nesting peregrine falcon stream for our background again. All right.
Okay. Let's see. Where are we? This is a really, really interesting question. Do falcons grieve? Did Annie grieve Grinnell? So emotion in animals is like one of the single hardest things to study in science, because you just can't ask them how they're feeling about stuff. We can get context clues. We can even like get hormone levels and that kind of stuff to try to figure out how animals feel about certain things. And in some animals, there's very obvious grief when it comes to the loss of a family member. Particularly, this is seen in like elephants or a lot of other mammals that have really kind of high intelligence, dolphins. This has been recorded in some bird species, I think mostly corvids.
Yeah, corvids will continue to kind of come to the body of the deceased and try to like communicate with them. So they seem to show signs of grief. As far as peregrine falcons, there isn't clear behaviors that would indicate that to us, but that doesn't mean it doesn't occur. Obviously, Annie, is able to move on and continue doing whatever she can to take care of her chicks. So, from a human perspective, she definitely got over it awful fast. But, I don't know what Annie's inner life is like. I mean,
yeah, and if the biological imperative is to have a breeding season every year, she kind of needed Alden to make this year a success, and he kind of showed up there really fast, and she kind of jumped on that opportunity to kind of keep this a potentially successful breeding season.
Yeah, and now this next one. So we've seen a lot of unknown falcons. Is that an indication of a healthy growing falcon population? And yes, it is. And so from our perspective as like population ecologists, that's awesome that we're seeing all these different falcons and that there's competition for nest sites, because that means there's just like such a density of falcons that, there's really the ability for falcons to kind of have this kind of competition. But on the personal level of someone who specifically follows this pair, it's a little stressful. But I encourage everybody, even though kind of how stressful it is and how tragic it was to lose Grinnell, that it's actually an optimistic sign. The peregrine falcons, their populations have recovered from like near zero in the United States to so many that they're competing over the tower. So we should feel good about all this competition, at least,
Yeah.
on an intellectual level.
All right. So do students get involved with Cal Falcons? How did Cal Falcons start? Yes. So because we started streaming in 2019, and then the next year was the start of the pandemic and kind of shut down a lot of our plans for in-person events. So we were hoping to recruit a bunch of students to help out with like Fledge Watch and all sorts of other activities. And we had to just kind of put a pin in it due to COVID. But yes, we would love to have more and more students get involved. We're having we have some new students on this year who are helping out.
Yep, they're helping plan some educational events when we're hoping to see chicks hatching. So we're gonna announce some details about that and the great work that's being planned on campus. But yeah, if people are interested in getting involved with planning events or education things, or with helping out with fledge watches or monitoring the cams and cutting video, contact us, send us a DM on whatever social media channel or an email, and we can get people some info.
Yeah.
And then I guess, how did Cal Falcons start?
A group of like 6-7 biologists kind of all were like, whoa, there's peregrine falcons nesting on the campanile.
Yeah, like from the moment that they arrived in 2016, 17 winter, there's just kind of been a group of us that have been watching them, and we sort of just got into the conversation that like, well, wouldn't it be like a fun like campus thing to get people involved in, to watch the local birds. So we made a little bit of social media, and they got really surprised that it was more than just a like tiny little campus thing, that we've got people from all over watching,
which is really fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Grinnell seemed overmatched by the barrage of juvenile females coming around. He sometimes avoided confronting them. Is this because Annie was not there enough to help defend the territory? This is a really good question, and I think it's a hard one to answer, because we still don't know why Annie left the territory for like a week right before egg laying. And she may have been just avoiding confronting the juveniles until they kind of figured themselves out, and there was only one or so left. But Grinnell, and all male falcons are a lot smaller than the female falcons, and
he definitely did avoid confronting them when it was not necessary. So when they did not actively have eggs in the box, Grinnell would chase them out of the area to an extent, but he was, when the eggs weren't there, he was not going to take a serious and crazy risk with a bird that's, a third bigger than he is. And so it's kind of, worth noting that the day that Grinnell ended up down in the road, when he had this major conflict with a large juvenile female falcon, it was the first time that one of these juveniles went into the nest box near the eggs.
Yeah. Do you think Alden is now delivering food to the runway? Haven't seen any on-camera deliveries recently.
Yeah, that's what we suspect, and it's a little hard to tell because we know Alden is hunting at night. And so I think a lot of observations on that get missed. None of the people who watch the falcons from the ground, of course, are watching in the middle of the night. But yeah, my suspicion is that food is being delivered to the balcony right above the nest level.
Or below. I think they like
they do like that
spot
too.
Below, which is the
that's
runway.
What we mean by the runway.
Yeah.
I feel like we're the ones who coined that at some point.
Any clue where Grinnell's memorial items went? Is the team or Cal still interested in memorializing his life in any way?
Yeah, we definitely are. So the memorial items, we don't know what happened. Right before they kind of disappeared, there had been quite a bit of rain and wind, and I think at least one of the vases broke. So I think stuff got scattered and then ultimately cleaned up. We kind of asked around because we're hoping to get a little bit of the art kind of collected. We wanted to feature some of the art that people have made for Grinnell on our website, and that's one of the things we're planning to do, is put a call out to all the different people who made Grinnell art for us and try to feature that all on our website for people. And then we're hoping to do a little memorial for when we ultimately determine what Grinnell's ultimate resting place is going to be.
Yeah, we're still in discussion about that, and sorry we're moving a little bit slow, but we have not forgotten him, and we are we'll let everyone know as soon as we have kind of more of an idea of how we're going to memorialize him.
There are some restrictions when it comes to the handling of remains of a protected species.
Yeah.
One, and then two, we kind of just have not fully figured out
the best way to do it. But yeah, it's definitely on our minds. All right. So what makes falcons aerodynamic so they can get up to 200 miles per hour in their stoops? So they have a bunch of different kind of little adaptations that kind of allow them to travel as fast as they do. Like there's one of the really odd ones is there's a little cone inside their nostril that kind of slows the air as it enters the nostril, so it doesn't blast through their nose.
Yeah. So there's kind of big and obvious things, and then there's little adaptations like that, but they have all of these adaptations to do it. First and foremost is that their shape is just incredibly streamlined. They have these very pointed and narrow wings relative to other birds. So when they're in a stoop, they can pull those wings back in a way that makes them essentially torpedo shaped. So they can go into it's a kind of a powered free fall that they are dropping, and then we'll add some momentum and flap. But yeah, they have all sorts of little adaptations, like their nostrils are designed so the air doesn't get brushed up in there. They will close the nictitating membrane on their eyes, so that's kind of the third semi-translucent eyelids. There's a lot of research about like the falcon shape actually creates like a little vortex around themselves to like I saw this in
like
Nature magazine.
A warp bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they really are kind of an amazing kind of suite of adaptations that they have evolved over millions of years to be the speedsters that they are.
Ooh, yeah. How likely is it that neither is the parent? Not super likely. It's relatively. So people have done studies of what's called, extra pair paternity and extra pair copulation. So, the tendency to rear offspring that are not necessarily your own and to have offspring outside of your social pair. And although it's very common in songbirds to have these extra pair relationships, it's really not very common in peregrine falcons. Studies of it have shown very little of it happening, so that it would be neither grinnell or Alden, but like a mystery third bird is pretty unlikely. That doesn't, it's a non-zero chance. It's possible that, what Annie was up to was perhaps, I don't know, sought out that male that she, was with briefly while grinnell was gone, but probably not. It's not super likely. All right. Where are we leaving off? Let's see. So, how large are territories in general? How many peregrine territories are in the Albany, Berkland, Oakland, Emeryville? And actually, now that I start this, I feel like I need Sean back because he probably knows a little bit better. We did mention that Santa Cruz Predatory Bird Research Group, they're closely following 35 Bay Area nest sites. So that's not specifically East Bay, but, kind of gives you a general idea. The territories, a mile square is like the very, very minimum, but usually quite a bit larger than that. But yeah, when Sean gets back, I'll ask him if he knows how many are in the general neighborhood of Berkeley. So do we have access to the previous recording? So on our YouTube channel, we have all the archives of clips from the webcams, and then we've also archived things like the Q&As, and we'll archive this one. So just Google our channel and you can kind of look through all of that. So what do we make of all the news coverage? Is this the first year they've received this much coverage? Oh yeah, the Shepard Smith segment, that cracked me up. Other members of Cal Falcons were not huge fans of the non-scientific nature of the report, but if it gets people interested in checking us out, then we can add the science part to it. So
this has been by far the most news coverage we've ever had.
Because locally people have been sort of interested in the falcons regularly. So the Chronicle will sort of mention that there was a hatching, and stuff, and that in 2020 during that kind of COVID, people are sort of interested in it. But I think it's really this sort of complex story of the relationships between multiple falcons that I think people have really just sort of found interesting, I guess.
And it kind of went from what we have called slow TV, where you just kind of have it on in the background, to being something that was kind of really dramatic. So that was a bit of a change, and I certainly really hope it goes back to being just
I'd like the drama to
Yeah.
to take it
she'll
down
mess
a
up. But
notch.
it's one of those things where, thinking in the ecological and population ecology sense, it might be kind of a relatively dramatic, the Bay Area might be relatively dramatic for the foreseeable future because they're
just
kind of
more
reaching
falcons.
saturation, and there just might be that many more falcons.
All right. So the technical term, when falcons shimmy down over the eggs, if you ask anyone else, they'll say there isn't one. It's influffling. They are influffling the egg.
Which I heard if you Google that, you just get directed to our website. So.
Good. We'll make it real. We are qualified ornithologists, and that movement
we can
requires
say,
a word.
Yeah, we can say it's a scientific term because we're scientists and we came up with it. But seriously, they're I don't know, settling maybe. This is the closest I have to that, but I don't think there really is a technical term for that shimmy. Influffling. We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah. Do you think Alden's in pain when he walks on the injured leg? So this is another. It's really hard to know exactly what he's experiencing, but he does definitely walk very carefully on that leg. I imagine it does hurt him.
Yeah. It probably does, but it's so hard to say. And if it's like a really old broken leg, it might not be able to support his weight, but it might not hurt very much anymore. It's we just don't know, and without like drawing his blood and trying to get some estimate of like stress hormones or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how you
couldn't ever know.
All right. So when the chicks fledge, are they chased off by the parents? And so for the first month or two, or sometimes more, the parents are watching the chicks after they fledge and are learning to fly. They watch the chicks. They're bringing food to the chicks even as they start moving around the territory and learning to fly. They're teaching them how to hunt. So right as they fledge, the parents actually spend a lot of time still caring for the young. And sometimes the young will even hang out for several months. But eventually, yes, the parents will chase them off of the territory and, I don't know, make them get a job of their own. Eventually they are chased off by their parents. And then after that point where the parents are no longer, watching them during that period of their life, they would continue to try to exclude their own chicks from their territory.
All right. So I love this question because the answer to this varies species to species of how would Alden even know if an egg is his or not? It seems like he acts on instinct and hormones. So for songbirds and a few other kind of groups of birds, there are some species that are called, why am I blanking on the word? Kleptoparasites.
Yes.
So nest parasites.
Yeah, you're thinking.
And nest parasites are birds like brown-headed cowbirds or other cowbirds or cuckoos, especially in the old world, that lay their eggs in the nests of other birds. And many birds don't know. So you can have an egg that is kind of like yours, but maybe a little different, and the birds don't notice.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's really different and they don't notice.
Yeah. So songbirds will often, when these nest parasites lay an egg in their nest, some species will very quickly notice an egg that's even slightly different and have a pretty good sense of which eggs are theirs and which are not. And other species, they can have a nest of green eggs and there will be a spotted cowbird egg in the nest and they will not notice. And so
there's also evidence that birds are capable of counting eggs. Hi.
Yeah. So this is a long way of saying, does Alden even know if an egg is his or not? It's possible that he's, able to count and know that two of these are not his. On the other hand, it's possible that he is just at a territory with a mate, and so he knows what he needs to do is help brood the chicks and provide food to a mate. So I don't know if Alden is directly aware whether or not, one or multiple of these eggs are his. I would suspect he, has some level of awareness because he came into a nest that had eggs in it with someone who was not his mate during the period it had eggs in it. But, his level of awareness of that kind of thing is hard to say. So how come I never see this birdie leave the nest? I go back on rewind, and she does, Annie does, and Alden will take turns on the nest, but they are on the eggs almost constantly right now. Alden takes relatively shorter turns incubating, so the vast majority of the time, you're pretty much seeing Annie on the nest napping right now, and that is what we hope for. That we just see Annie on the nest kind of half asleep most of the time until May 5th or 6th when we hope those eggs hatch.
Yeah, this is going to be boring TV for the next 2 weeks, basically. And then we're really hoping, relatively boring, although with more kind of cute, fluffy things for a little bit longer after that. And then the real excitement of watching this nest occurs in the last week and a half before the chicks fly, when they're just running all over the place, and they're just a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah. All right. I'll highlight this one. Shout out to Moon Rabbit Rising. So at Moon Rabbit Rising on Instagram, she's the one that's taking all these amazing pictures from below at the tower, and she's the one giving us a ton of these awesome observations of what's going on below and off the web cabin. So if you like watching Cal Falcons, I'd suggest checking her stuff out too, because she has the other half of what's going on with them. Okay, so does a pair spend time with each other out of the breeding season, even when there's no mating and no raising chicks? And the answer is kind of a yes and no. Most peregrine falcons are migratory, and they will spend their winters in a totally different place than where they breed. There's individuals who are nesting in Greenland who then are spending their winters in Argentina. So those individuals would not be seeing their mate in the off season. On the other hand, the Berkeley birds, Annie and Grinnell did not migrate. I guess it remains to be seen if Alden migrates, but chances are he does not, because the Bay Area climate does not require long distance migration like most peregrine falcons take. So Annie and Grinnell historically stayed on their territory and did come in contact and did occasionally spend time together. And in fact, we have seen them copulating in the off season too, when they did have no intention of raising young. So they maintain that pair bond.
Yep.
Even off season when they do happen to be on the territory together.
Yep. All right. So would the team entertain the idea of occasional short get-togethers for interested fans to learn about or observe our Cal Falcons? Yes. We'll be out there during Fledge Watch.
Well, we're having some educational stuff that we mentioned.
Yep, we're planning educational stuff.
We've had some students join Cal Falcons, Leah and Uero, and they are going to help us out with planning some, hopefully, hatch day events, some bird walks for people to do, maybe a few other things. So
we'll publicize this stuff as we kind of finalize details. But yes, we would love to get more in-person events moving.
Yeah, and we'll totally take ideas for stuff that people would like to do. We had all these grand ideas in 2020 that we were going to try to do for Cal Falcon stuff in person, and those, for some reason, just couldn't happen. I forget what was going on in 2020.
I don't know. Was there anything?
I have no idea. But anyways, we had all these grand plans in 2020, and so we're gonna make those grand plans happen in 2022.
All right. So why do they kind of shake their head, kind of bob their head while they're incubating? Does Annie kind of do it? She seems to do it while the bells are ringing. Is that because she's annoyed by the bells? So we get a lot of questions about the bells. And I think this is like the most surprising thing about the campanile is it's not actually that loud up on the Falcon level.
Yeah, it shocked me when we were up there cleaning the balcony. We were like, well, we don't want to do it at noon because it's going to be so loud up there. But we ended up only being able to schedule it from like 11 to 1 or something. And we're like bracing ourselves for the bells. And it was really, you could hear them clearly, but it was not the level of sound I was expecting.
Yeah. And then so the head movements on the nest, while she's incubating, could be just itching. Wild animals get parasites and things that bother them. Growing in new feathers is an itchy process.
It's worth noting that birds are not able to move their eyes within their sockets. So if they want to look at something, they have to turn their whole head.
Yeah, so she could just be looking around. I don't think she's being bothered by anything really. So that's, yeah, I guess that's a bit, I don't really have a great answer to this question. Sorry.
Yeah, so where is Grinnell's body? Is there any chance of sequencing his DNA? So Grinnell's body is currently being held by the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology, so that's right on campus. And any chance of sequencing his DNA?
Possibly.
We're kind of thinking about it. We are thinking about trying to start a little bit of a Bay Area wide study with peregrine genetics to get some idea of like movement between nest sites and movement of birds in the region.
And Zika has already been doing a lot of this work of trying to get an idea of how interrelated the birds of the Bay Area are. So hopefully, Art will continue to contribute to that effort.
Yeah, so it might be part of a larger study. And as we kind of mentioned, we have sort of thought about looking at the chick's DNA as well, since samples are being taken. So
here's a couple of questions related to Grinnell's death. The first one is, when will we know more about Grinnell's cause of death or any evidence of a fight injury prior to vehicular injury in Grinnell? The short answer is we probably are not going to get any more information on the cause of death. The body was not in a great state, so you can't really do a necropsy or look into any other injuries because everything is just going to be masked by the vehicle injury. Unless someone was there watching and saw what happened, all we can really do is speculate. We know he was interacting with a juvenile female that morning. He may have been involved in a fight with that juvenile female that led to him being on the ground and then hit by a car. He may have been in a hunting accident or something. He may have hit a window. We don't know. It's most likely he was grounded by fighting another bird, most likely that juvenile female. But I don't think we'll ever know exactly what happened. And yeah, do you have anything you want to?
Someone did report that there was also a pigeon that had been hit in the road near Grinnell's body. So I don't know. That might be evidence that it was some accident that Grinnell suffered while hunting. But, so that's evidence to one way, but, that could also be incidental. I mean, the fact that he was already in some pretty severe conflict with the other bird the morning that he died kind of indicates that is a likely scenario.
Do falcons have decent night vision, or does it not matter if there's enough light from the cities? They do have decent night vision. They do hunt at night in the wild, like in more wilderness areas. But I think the light pollution from cities is certainly a help when it comes to hunting.
Makes
for them.
It a lot easier. So their night vision is better than a human's, to an extent, but
it's not like adapted for it like owls are, who have really huge eyes. So it's better than us, but it probably is aided quite a bit from light pollution.
All right. So the name Alden. So we kind of, opened up our social media to just suggestions from all over from people, and we got a ton of amazing suggestions.
So many
good suggestions that we, with much difficulty, narrowed down to 9 that people could vote on. And Alden was the one that was chosen. Alden is in reference to Alden Miller, who was the second director at the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology. The first director being Joseph Grinnell, so Grinnell's namesake. So I think a lot of people thought it was appropriate that the successor to Grinnell the Falcon should be named after it should be Alden the Falcon. Alden was also a student of Grinnell's, and that's where that name comes from. Also, it's just a very good name as a name. I kind of have
sounds good with Annie.
I want to name something. I mean, we've named a falcon Alden, but I have
what else could be named Alden?
What can I name Alden?
Okay, so why is there no live chat on the stream? The main reason is that we have had bad experiences with spamming live chats. They're hard to moderate, and they end up with kind of just maybe a lot of stuff that is misleading or inappropriate.
Despite us operating a YouTube channel, I will say YouTube is peak poor behavior as far as social media stuff goes sometimes. So we just had problems with people spamming and saying some very inappropriate stuff. And since, no one's going to be able to be present to kind of try to help moderate things. It's just a little bit difficult, but we had people who are saying off-topic, non-Falcon related, incredibly offensive stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's not worth keeping open.
Yeah. Just gonna say hi, Walter.
Hey, Walter.
If you ever want to see some of the most amazing bird photography you will ever see, look for Walter's work. It's just unbelievable.
Yep. At Bird Turntable, he's done a lot of Bay Area raptor photography, not the Cal Falcon specifically, but some really good Bay Area raptor photography. Well, now Greater Chicago area raptor photography.
Here's just more evidence that there was last year was a banner year for peregrine falcons. The Mendocino Coast raised 5 chicks last year. So 5 is just a pretty phenomenally successful year. I think the Davis pair raised 5 2 years ago, last year, 2 years ago.
So usually peregrine falcons lay 3 or 4 eggs, and 5 is usually considered exceptional, and usually not all 5 would hatch, but it's been some very good years for peregrine falcons, and so we've got some situations with 5 eggs.
All right. We'll just quickly answer this. I think we've answered it already, but we'll answer it again. We're expecting or hoping hatch would be May 5th or 6th, probably more likely the 6th. But we are into the, let's see, I can pull up my...
Should we put up like a little days till hatch calendar?
That's
the problem is I just have this anxiety.
So based on egg development studies of other species, not falcons, we don't know for sure, but we're expecting that roughly today is when the chicks will start to grow claws and leg scales. And then actually in 2 more days is about when the down is gonna start to grow. So they're really getting to the fully developed point, and then they're just gonna really start growing in size. let's see. We're kind of, I think, so lots of, we've reached the point where we're getting the answer to earlier questions. Yes, to a falconer. Okay, we'll look for a falconer.
I know some falconers who might be interested. Oh, here's a physiology question. So it goes to you.
Oh man.
Do falcons experience menopause?
Birds do experience menopause. I don't know much about it. So I would have to do some Googling to answer that question fully. Eventually Annie would not be able to lay eggs, but it is unlikely that she would reach that age. I think most wild birds pass away well before they reach menopause. Menopause is mostly observed in captive birds. Super fun. See you on any media outlet, especially me, yours truly, on ABC7. Could we tweet in advance when and where? We'll try to do that. The ABC7 morning segment has turned into an ongoing thing. So I think if
Friday
you just turn in Friday mornings at
7:30
on ABC7 on their website. We'll try to kind of update everyone on the week's activities, but they've been really fun to hang out with. Let's see.
Okay. So this is a good question because we get it. And so is it possible to add another camera for the runway, since Alden likes to stay there and talk to Annie? And on top of that, it's where a lot of the juveniles go, right, as they're starting to get ready to fledge. And the answer is we would love to, but we can't. So there are some restrictions regarding cameras that would be filming full-time placed on campus that would be in a spot where you could be viewing people from above. There's some privacy-related restrictions. So us as private citizens on campus can't be putting up cameras that would be able to see people's activities.
Yeah, UC Berkeley is very, very serious about privacy of students and faculty and staff and everything. So we worked with UC Police Department pretty extensively in how to set up these cameras so that they were not able to see any students or anyone on campus. So although we would love to have a camera on the outside looking at the runway, it's just not possible given the structure of the camp in Ely.
Yeah. So why did Annie accept Alden so immediately rather than waiting for Grinnell to return a while? And so I feel like we've gotten a lot of people who are like, oh, but does Annie know Grinnell is dead? How would, so as a falcon, a peregrine falcon can easily spot a prey item from a mile away. And so where Grinnell was hit by a car was well within that range of what a falcon would be able to see. It is very likely Annie knew what happened when it happened.
And after it happened, she was sitting on the nest. She was due for an egg that day. And then that night, Alden was sitting on the balcony, and she was kind of chatting with him a little bit, but not like instigating anything. She left the nest for a little bit. We think she probably laid the egg that she had somewhere else and just abandoned it, and then came back. And I think she knew that night that if Grinnell didn't come back and Alden was sitting on the tower for so long that he wasn't going to be coming back. So I think that the behavior of Alden and the lack of Grinnell made it obvious that he wasn't going to come back.
Yeah. So is Annie still auditioning Alden to be a permanent mate? Is she likely to remain paired with him? And to an extent, yes. If they have a successful breeding season, Annie will very likely favor Alden into the future and want to continue with him, because if it is a successful breeding season, that means Alden has proven himself to be, an effective parent and a good mate. If the nest fails, she still might opt to remain with Alden. She does kind of have a sense of his hunting ability, and he has been doing a good job incubating and that kind of stuff. But it would make it more likely that she may decide to favor a different male in the future. So yes and no. Let's see. So this is a little off falcon topic, but gives me an opportunity to bring up eBird. So they mentioned they'd seen a kestrel in Pasadena, that they'd never seen one there before, and wants to know, are peregrines down there? They haven't seen one. And so there is an awesome website called ebird.org, and it's a community science website that allows people to submit their bird observations from that they take anywhere around the world. And what kind of is fun about this website is, one, it allows people from the community to contribute to science and give their observations to the eBird group, which then scientists are able to use. But they also make it so that you can access the information yourself as well on eBird, and it can give you information about where sightings of any species you're interested have been made. You can get information about what kinds of species are in your area. So ebird.org, I really would encourage people to check out that website if you've never used it.
Yeah. Is there an official ornithology department or team at UC Berkeley? So there's kind of two groups of ornithologists at UC Berkeley. I think kind of the main group is in the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology. So that's in the integrative biology department. And that's some really, really amazing people working there. And then there's some ornithologists also working in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy, and Management, which was where I got my PhD. It's not specifically ornithology. It's more wildlife and ecology targeted, but does kind of fit into the, you can kind of think about, ecology is kind of applied ornithology and studying the behavior and kind of ecosystems of birds and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my plug for those two departments at Cal. I love this question here. Why don't other birds dive bomb at 200 miles per hour? I want to see a chickadee dive bombing at 200 miles per hour.
I think it's because peregrine falcons really do have some pretty extreme adaptations when it comes to body morphology, the shape of their wings, and all these other things. So I think it's a very specialized lifestyle that they're taking. So there's kind of quite a bit of a evolutionary history behind that. It's partially because of a bit of an evolutionary arms race between them and
the pigeon.
Pigeons are one of the faster species. So I think it's partially that it's really just a very specialized lifestyle. And so for most species, that's not the most effective direction to go in to find your prey.
So one thing that I feel like kind of answers this a little bit is if you look at how the various raptors hunt their prey, they really kind of fit in very distinct niches of what prey they go after, where they go after, and how they attack it. And so a peregrine is really good at hunting medium to largest size prey in the open and dive bombing it. But if you look at one of the other hawks on campus, the red-shouldered hawk, it's hunts prey in much denser vegetation, lower to the ground, often smaller prey, and you can see that these are they're just separating what they're hunting for. So there's a lot of food that the peregrine goes after that the red shoulder couldn't or wouldn't, and there's a lot of food that the red shoulder will go after that the peregrine could not hunt successfully because it's in too dense cover to dive bomb.
Yeah, a peregrine falcon has very difficult time trying to catch any prey on the ground. So that's why you almost never see them hunting rodents, and they really are not capable to hunt in a heavily treed setting. Just Yeah.
All right, so how far do fledged falcons go to find new territory? And this is one of the biggest question marks in not just raptor biology, but bird biology, is where do young go to find their spot? And that has largely had to do with difficulty with getting the technology miniaturized enough to answer that question. Because if you put a band on a bird and you re-find a bird, you're only going to find the birds where you're looking for them. So if a bird flies 10 miles away from where you're looking, you won't know it's there. But if you have a transmitter that has GPS capabilities and can transmit that information back to you wherever the bird is, then you can find out how far they're dispersing. So we're still kind of just reaching that point where we're able to get that technology onto juvenile birds and try to answer that. What we do know is that from banding records, a lot of the birds in the Bay Area stay in the Bay Area, but a lot of birds don't. We've had resightings of birds banded in the Bay Area as far north as, I think, Oregon was the northernmost one. So they're capable of dispersing pretty far.
I mean, they're capable of flying across the entire world during migration.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a bit of a question mark because there's something of a sampling bias when it comes to the banding data. Many of the banded juveniles in the Bay Area are found again in the Bay Area, but that's also because there are far more people around in the Bay Area to find those birds. And so if the birds did end up in, the vastness of the Sierra Nevada somewhere, it's just a lot less likely they'll be encountered by a human. Let's see. Okay, so slightly anthropomorphic, but a reasonable question. Was Annie conferring with Alden during the days she went missing? She really readily accepted him once Grinnell failed to appear. And so we actually have quite a few hypotheses about Annie and Grinnell's relationship with Alden prior to Grinnell's passing, because we know Alden was present in and around the Campanile multiple times in the months before Grinnell's passing.
And we're pretty sure he brought her food as well.
Like Alden brought Annie food while Grinnell was still alive, at least once. We think Alden was potentially going to be a helper at the nest, which is very rare in peregrine falcons, but it's when a third individual who's not part of the breeding pair does start to help at the nest. This strategy would make it possible for something like what we did see happen, where the adult, was able to come in after one passed. So it is possible. We do know Annie already knew Alden before Grinnell's passing, but what makes this very weird is people are interpreting that as an Annie doing something sneaky kind of thing and putting it in human terms. But we'd also seen Grinnell around Alden, and Grinnell did not seem to behave aggressively towards Alden either.
Yeah. So yes, the short answer to your question is we don't know the full extent of the relationship, especially not knowing where Annie was for that week. So we just don't know. And it would have been fascinating to see if that relationship had developed into the helper relationship if Grinnell had not died.
I would have loved if there had been a nest with all three of them.
Yeah.
That would have been the greatest. And so we'll never know if Alden was potentially going to be a helper. But anyways, we do know that Annie was familiar with Alden before Grinnell's passing.
Yeah. So how long was Grinnell a Cal Falcon? Grinnell was first sighted in that winter of 2016 to 2017 when he and Annie moved into the tower. So he and Annie are the original Cal Falcons. And so he was there until he died this year. And we know it was him for sure because he had leg bands. So we could identify exactly who he was based on the numbers and letters on his legs. All right. So this year's Cal Falcon T-shirt has Annie and Grinnell kind of preening each other. Do adult falcons do that? I only see chicks do that.
So adult falcons do that. The scientific word for that is allopreening. They do not do it as much as some species do. Birds like parrots do it a ton.
All the time.
And the chicks definitely do it more than the adults, but the adults do alloprene. It's a little bit part of the bonding process. We don't see it a lot in the nest box specifically because outside of when they have eggs, they don't really spend a ton of time in the nest box except for that bow courtship display. But yeah, they do that. And I want to put a little shout out. The person who designed our t-shirt this year with that wonderful Annie and Grinnell design is Lauren Helton. Her Instagram and Twitter handle are @tinylongwing. So just want to say that she does some very amazing, detailed, really, really beautiful scientific illustration. So the t-shirt's outside of her like usual style. So I really suggest people check out what she does because it is just so amazing.
All right. Are peregrine falcons native to North America or were they introduced?
Peregrine falcons, since they're capable of dispersing literally anywhere in the world they want to, because their capacity for long distance flying is so good, they are native to pretty much everywhere in the world. They have historically lived on every continent but Antarctica. They nest in pretty much any place that has ledges where a falcon could build a nest. So that's pretty much everywhere other than like the Sahara Desert and the Amazon basin and a bit of the Asian steppe. Oh, Sean's bringing up a screenshot so we can look at what the range of the peregrine falcon is. So there, it's just like I described. So pretty much they are native to everywhere. That includes Australia, although not New Zealand.
Yeah. They're missing from some of the Pacific Islands.
So where they're missing from is largely those places where there would not be an appropriate rocky ledge for them to nest on. So the Amazon basin, the steppe region,
Congo basin.
Yeah.
Some of the really deserty deserts. But yeah, they're pretty much found everywhere. So one of the other questions we get is, do the Campaniles lights bother Annie and Alden? And they really don't. And they nest all the way up in the high Arctic, where they have light pretty much 24 hours a day when they're breeding. So they're used to lights on all the time, or they're at least evolutionary capable of handling that. All right, back to sharing the cute falcon.
Yeah.
Okay. How much time do we have? Like, we can do maybe one or two more questions. There's a lot more questions.
There's a lot more questions. I mean, I'm still willing to hang out. We'll see how long our son is willing to hang out while we're here. We're letting him watch the Magic School Bus while we're doing this. Eventually, he'll get bored of it.
Okay, let's see.
Although, yeah, TV is a special enough thing that maybe not. Maybe he'll.
All right. Because there is so much competition for territory, does that increase the likelihood of floaters will go after the chicks?
Unfortunately, yes.
Chicks are at a danger from floaters. They can get killed in the nest as part of an attempt to take over a territory. And that's why once there are chicks in the nest, and actually still now, you will pretty much never see both Annie and Alden away from the tower. One or the other is always going to be there. And judging by Alden's defense of the territory so far, I think that's going to be he's going to be pretty effective at keeping any floaters away from the chicks and the eggs. So here's someone has also called it settling, but fluffling
it's in fluffling.
is the better word.
It's definitely in fluffling.
All right. I heard the fledglings like to hang out on top of Evans. With the demolition plan for Evans, how will this affect the fledglings?
Yeah, so the fledglings do love to go towards Evans just because it's kind of the next high building in the direction they tend to go. But actually, Evans is a little bit of a dangerous building for them anyways. Campus has helped by putting up some streamers and bird-safe window glass window details to make it so that they can see those windows. But it still has sort of some odd little indoor courtyards that fledglings have gotten caught in before. The first year that they were nesting before we knew how much of a danger the building was, one of the fledglings died hitting Evans Hall. So it will take away kind of one of their favorite perches when they fledge, but it also takes away actually one of the more dangerous buildings for them on campus. Mm-hmm. And realistically, there are so many possible places for a fledgling bird to go to on campus that I don't think they'll have a difficult time adjusting. Oh yeah. All right. So what are the offspring of Annie and Grinnell up to? Are they still in the Bay Area? And so most of Grinnell and Annie's offspring, we have, not heard from them and where they are. They've had, I was going to ask Sean because he knows. Anyways, we've had, I think, 13 chicks through the years that have fledged. We know that the one died hitting a window in Evans Hall. We know that one has started nesting on Alcatraz Island. That one was Laurentium or Larry, who was hatched in 2018. So she's been nesting on Alcatraz Island, and she's been there since her second year of life. And so she's given Annie multiple grandchildren. And then we know where one more is. And Sequoia from 2020 ended up spending the winter in San Jose this last year. And Sean might know more specifics, but so we know where two of them are. They're still in the Bay Area. One of them is doing a great job nesting and having grandkids, and the other is in San Jose and looks healthy. All right. So since Falcon used their talents to catch prey, does Alden's injured leg affect his hunting ability? And so Alden's injured leg doesn't affect his primary mode of dispatching prey in the first place, which would be the very high-speed dive bomb. What it might affect is his ability to maintain grip on the prey item after it's been killed so he can take it back to the nest. It might be somewhat more difficult for him to hang onto it originally, so he might have some, greater effort he needs to take to grab it out of the air. But that would be more of an inconvenience and maybe makes him slightly more susceptible to another bird stealing his prey, but not really preventing him from actually catching prey in the first place. All right. I feel like so have the Cal Falcon shirts been mailed out?
I believe they are slated to be mailed out within the next week. I think the arrival date is actually scheduled for prior to May 5th, is what the Custom Ink told me.
Yeah.
So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well with shipping and everything. Everyone should be getting that round of shirts just before hatch day.
Yeah, that's what we kind of decided to do. And just kind of a quick word. So we sell these shirts through Custom Ink's fundraiser. And so how it works is they kind of give you the month period to buy shirts in, and then they will ship out all of those purchases at the end of that month-long period. And so we will update it again. And so the t-shirt sales are ongoing. So even if it says like X number of days left, that's just until the next round before they ship. So just in case people are wondering, because I was a little confused about what the system was for a minute. Yeah.
Oh geez, we're finally caught up to the.
Oh yeah, see there's. I mean, that's just a bot.
Yeah.
But anyway, see, it's YouTube. Something's gonna spam even in your like hour and a half long chat.
Zika's research sounds really interesting. Use molecular biology tool to track them. Will there be any paper about it? Yes, I believe.
Hello, Mom.
Zika is planning on
Hello,
publishing.
Mommy.
Your turn.
I'm right here.
Oh, I see that you're right here. All right.
So now our son is.
To some people.
I came.
You came.
You did. You know answers about Falcons?
All right. Well, we may just do one or two more questions. I think we're actually kind of running out of questions. So let's see. Does Berkeley have volunteers to help with fledgling like San Jose does? Yes, we do. Our Fledge Watch team is run by Mary Malik, and she does an amazing, amazing job of keeping an eye on these chicks as they learn how to fly on campus. She puts in a tremendous amount of effort and asks for volunteers. And so hopefully we'll, have the ability to have more people help out in the future.
I want to just pop in a little thing. Okay, so technology to figure out who's flying the drones. So no, but we have discovered something about the drone thing. So the most common app used for people to look if an area permits drone flying inaccurately says that Cal does permit drone flying. And we've tried to contact the people who run the app without success. But if other people would like to help us, ooh, look, some fluffling's about to happen. Anyways, if anyone would like to help, contact some of the apps that drone pilots use to look at what areas permit flying drones. I would love that help. It's not a topic I know really much about. I don't actually know exactly which apps are out there. I was, told about one, but so I'll just put it out there in case anybody has any ideas about that. DM us on social media or something, because I'd really like to get that corrected. So question. So Annie had a big gap between egg number 2 and egg number 3 this year. And usually a falcon would lay 4 eggs. So we think that one of the eggs got laid in another location, that she was unable to lay it in the nest box. So, there might have been a mysterious falcon egg somewhere, maybe even just on the balcony or something.
I think we're running out of time.
We're running out of time. I think our child wants us. Let's see.
I actually looked this up, so I want to answer it.
Oh, yeah?
Any word on the nest that failed close by? I don't know that answer, but is the bird flu a worry for these falcons? It is not. Apparently, the latest strain of hypervirulent bird flu is limited to the eastern United States. So it has not reached the western United States. But the new strain of bird flu does apparently hit raptors pretty hard. So hopefully it won't be a big problem. They're still kind of working on figuring out how dangerous it is, but not a worry currently for California.
Right. Well, so I think we're going to have to wrap this up, even though I still see some more
Bye, everyone.
some more really good questions, but we we need to go. But thanks everyone so much for all the good questions.
And don't hesitate to drop questions on social media. We'll try to answer anything.
All right.
Whenever.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
This is great.
I need